in terms of scripting that you may want to be aware of. On the left is an algorithm for finding the center line of a street. Okay? Things that you do in Rhino with scripting always are going to deal with geometry and numbers. Okay? So you are always going to have to be working with lines in Rhino. In GIS, you're actually able to get around some of the complicatedness of this with other methods. So, for instance, when I was modeling Central and Shongwan, there is the black line here is actually derived through the methods in Spatial Analyst. So using rasters rather than using vectors. So when your geometry gets so complicated, for instance, here, that you can no longer, you no longer have control over how this center line is generating, there are ways to get out of it and actually begin to work procedurally inside of rasters. Hopefully over the next few weeks you'll begin to learn the limits of what scripting inside of Rhino can do for you. And how far you can go with it. I mostly just put this up here to note that if anyone went to Adam's lecture last week, the section that is cut in here is from the 1982 mid-level study, when there was a moratorium on construction in the mid-levels. So a little bit of truth checking. So there are readings for this class. There are no reading responses or anything like that. But I do recommend that you go through and read them. I'm also sorry I did not post the ones for today until this weekend. So the ones for today and for the next two classes are already up on Moodle. They include a familiar reading to people who took the class on the Amazon and Surfaces last term by Georges Legendre, who teaches at the GSD. This was back from his work at the Architectural Association, and a very good 2005-2006 piece on the differences between analog and digital form making. So if you want to consider if most of the things you've done in design so far are mostly analog, it's a useful piece to begin to think about the differences between the two. He goes through and compares himself to one of his colleagues, Shin, who runs his studios completely analog in terms of making surfaces via methods of casting, things that you're quite familiar with. And then very, very, very raw modes of making. Those are juxtaposed to Legendre's own digital modes of making. So these are, for instance, some of the digital modes of making. And Legendre believes that the digital platforms are medium in the very same way that that things like plaster and concrete, wood, etc. are, and they have particular influences on the outcome of form making. So operating after the surface versus operating before it. Shin's method of working would be operating after the surface. So a surface is created, or you start with a surface and then you begin to hammer at it, you begin to carve out of it. Okay, that is operating after the surface. Operating before it is there is no surface to start with. You are scripting or digitally making the surface. So Shin uses measurement and surveying as constructional. Pre- and post-rationalization are mutually inclusive. So it is both thinking about what he's going to make and reacting to what has already been made when you're dealing with analog modes of making. we separate the two out, pre-rationalization means that you have faith in the design process, that when you work with digital software, for instance, you believe that you will get something out of it. Okay? You don't already have a surface to start with. You think that you have faith that by working in these media, something will come out of it. It is syntactical, bottom-up, and also may not deliver. Post-rationalization or figuration, it's not abstract, it's top-down, and almost guarantees a completed project in some ways. Shin uses the material and semiotic or language-based